Chapter 73. It was towards 6 o'clock in the evening. A light yacht, pure and graceful of form, sailed swiftly along despite the fact that there scarcely seemed to be enough wind to ruffle the hair of a young girl. Standing in the bow, a tall young man of dark complexion watched land approaching in a dark cone-shaped mass, rising out of the sea like an immense Catalan hat. "Is that the Isle of Monte Cristo?" he asked, in a voice permeated with deep sadness. "Yes, Excellency," replied the captain of the yacht. A few minutes later, they saw a flash of fire from the island, and the sound of a shot reached their ears. "There's the signal, Excellency," said the captain. "Would you like to answer it yourself?" "Yes." The captain handed a loaded carbine to the young man, who raised it slowly and fired a shot into the air. 10 minutes later, the yacht was anchored, and a skiff had been put over the side with 4 rowers and a pilot in it. The young man climbed into it and stood in the stern with his arms crossed. All 8 oars plunged into the sea at once without splashing a single drop of water. The skiff began to glide rapidly through the waves. A short time later, it struck against a bottom of fine sand. "Excellency," said the pilot, "climb up on the shoulders of 2 of our men and let them carry you ashore." The young man replied to this invitation with a gesture of complete indifference, put his legs over the side of the boat, and slid into the water, which rose up to his waist. He began to walk toward shore, following 2 of the sailors, who chose the most solid footing for him. When he had reached dry ground, the young man looked around for someone to show him his way, for it had grown quite dark. Then a hand was placed on his shoulder, and a voice made him start. "Hello, Maximilian," said the voice. "Thank you for being punctual." "Ah, it's you, Count," said Maximilian, shaking Monte Cristo's hand. "Yes, I'm as punctual as you, but you're wet to the skin, my friend. You'll have to change clothes. Come, I've had lodgings prepared for you in which you'll forget your fatigue and cold." "Count," said Maximilian in a voice that was at once firm and gentle, "I come to you to die in the arms of a friend. There are still people I love in this world. I love my sister Julie, and I love her husband Emmanuel, but I need someone who will open strong arms to me and smile at me during my last moments of life. Julie would burst into tears and faint. I'd see her suffer as I've already suffered enough. Emmanuel would snatch my weapon from my hand and fill the house with his cries. But I have your word, Count. You'll lead me gently and tenderly into the gates of death, won't you?" "My friend," said Monte Cristo, "I still have one doubt. Could you have so little strength that you take pride in displaying your sorrow?" "No," said Maximilian. "My heart is beating neither more strongly nor more slowly than usual. I've simply come to the end of the road, and I won't go any further. Oh, Count, I'll be so glad to rest in the arms of death." Seeing that Monte Cristo made no answer, he went on. "You named the 5th of October as the end of the delay you asked me for. Today is the 5th of October. He took out his watch. "It's 9 o'clock. I have 3 more hours to live." "So be it," said Monte Cristo. "Come." Maximilian followed the Count mechanically, and was already inside the grotto before he noticed where he was. He found a carpet under his feet, a door opened, an odor of perfume enveloped him, and his eyes were struck by a bright light. He stopped hesitantly, mistrusting the enervating delights that surrounded him. Monte Cristo pulled him up gently and said, "Why shouldn't we spend these last 3 hours like those ancient Romans who, condemned to death by Nero, sat down at a table crowned with flowers and breathed in death with the perfume of heliotropes and roses?" Maximilian smiled. "As you like," he said. "Death is still death, still the absence of life and therefore pain." He sat down. Monte Cristo sat down in front of him. They were in a sumptuous dining room in which marble statues held on their heads baskets filled with flowers and fruit. Maximilian looked vaguely at everything around him. "Now I understand," he said, "why you asked me to meet you here on this deserted island in this underground palace, this sepulchre that a pharaoh would envy. It's because you love me, isn't it, Count? Because you want to give me a gentle death, a death without agony, a death that will allow me to fade away with Valentine's name on my lips and your hand in mine." "You've guessed rightly, Maximilian," said the Count simply. "That's my intention." "Thank you. The thought that my suffering will be ended tomorrow is sweet to me. You have no regrets?" "No, not even about leaving me?" asked the Count with deep emotion. Maximilian was silent. A tear welled up in his eyes. "What?" exclaimed the Count. "There's something on earth that you'll regret leaving, and you're still going to die?" "Don't say any more, Count, I beg you," said Maximilian feebly. "Don't prolong my agony." The Count believed Maximilian was weakening. This belief brought back the horrible doubt which he had overcome once before in the Château d'If. "I'm seeking to bring happiness to this man," he thought. "I regard this restitution as a weight thrown into the scale to balance the evil I have done. But what if I were mistaken? What if this man weren't unhappy enough to deserve happiness? What would happen to me who can forget evil only by remembering good?" Then he said aloud, "Your grief is overwhelming, Maximilian. I can see that, but you still believe in God, and you wouldn't want to risk the salvation of your soul." Maximilian smiled sadly. You know I'm not given to histrionics, he said, but I swear to you that my soul no longer belongs to me. Listen to me, Maximilian, said the Count. As you know, I have no living relatives. I've come to regard you as my son. I'd sacrifice my own life to save my son, so I'd certainly sacrifice my fortune. What do you mean? I mean that you want to leave life because you don't know all the enjoyments a great fortune can bring. I possess nearly 100 million francs. I'd give it all to you. Liam, stop. I'd give it all to you. With a fortune like that, you can have anything you want. If you're ambitious, all careers are open to you. Stir up the world, change its face, abandon yourself to mad ideas. Be a criminal if you must, but live. You've given me your word, Count, replied Maximilian coldly, and it's now 11:30. Maximilian, could you do that before my eyes in my house? Then let me leave you, said Maximilian gloomily. He stood up. Monte Cristo's face brightened at these words. Very well, he said. You want to die, and your will is inflexible. Yes, you're profoundly unhappy, and as you say, only a miracle could cure you. Sit down, Maximilian, and wait. Maximilian obeyed. Monte Cristo went over to a cabinet, unlocked it, and took out a small silver box, which he placed on the table. Then he opened it and took out a still smaller gold box, whose lid snapped open by means of a hidden spring. This box contained an oily, semi-solid substance whose color was indefinable due to the reflections of the polished gold in the box and the sapphires, rubies, and emeralds with which it was embellished. The Count took out a small quantity of the substance with a spoon and offered it to Maximilian, gazing at him steadfastly. At that moment, the substance could be seen to have a greenish hue. This is what you asked me for, said the Count, and this is what I promised you. I thank you from the bottom of my heart, said the young man, taking the spoon from Monte Cristo's hand. The Count took a second spoon and dipped it into the box. What are you doing? Asked Maximilian, stopping his hand. God forgive me, said the Count, smiling, but I think I'm as weary of life as you are, and since the opportunity has presented itself— Stop, cried the young man. You love and are loved in return. You have faith and hope. Don't do what I'm about to do. That would be a crime. Farewell, noble and generous friend. I'm going to tell Valentine everything you've done for me. Slowly, but without the slightest hesitation, Maximilian swallowed the mysterious substance. Little by little, the lamp seemed to grow dim in the hands of the marble statues, and the odor of incense became less penetrating. Seated in front of him, Monte Cristo looked at him from the shadows, and Maximilian could see nothing of him except his shining eyes. An overwhelming feeling of heaviness took possession of the young man. The objects around him began to lose their shape and color. His troubled eyes seemed to see doors and curtains opening in the walls. I'm dying, my friend, he said. Thank you. He tried to hold out his hand to the Count, but it fell lifelessly beside him. He rolled over in his armchair as delirious as a delicious torpor insinuated itself into all his veins, and he felt himself sinking into a vague, dreamy delirium. He tried once again to hold out his hand to the Count, but this time it refused to move at all. He tried to articulate a supreme farewell, but his tongue rolled heavily in his throat like a stone blocking the entrance to a sepulchre. The Count opened a door, and Maximilian saw a woman of wondrous beauty appear on the threshold. Pale and gently smiling, she seemed to be the angel of mercy. Are heaven's gates already opening for me? Thought the dying man. That angel looks like the one I lost. She walked toward him. Valentine, Valentine, cried Maximilian from the depths of his soul. But no sound came from his lips, and as though all his strength had been gathered into that inner emotion, he heaved a sigh and closed his eyes. Valentine rushed up to him. His lips made one more movement. He's calling you in his sleep, said the Count. Death tried to separate you, but happily I was there and I vanquished death. Valentine, you must never leave each other again on this earth, for in order to find you again, he was ready to plunge into the grave. Without me, you both would have died. I now give you back to each other. May God take into account these 2 lives I have saved. Valentine took the Count's hand and in a surge of irresistible joy pressed it to her lips. Oh, thank me, said Monte Cristo. Tell me again and again that I've made you happy. You can't know how much I need to be certain of that. Oh, yes, yes. I thank you with all my heart, said Valentine. If you doubt the sincerity of my thanks, ask Haydée, my precious sister, who made me wait patiently for this day by speaking to me about you from the time we left France together. Do you love Haydée? Asked Monte Cristo with an emotion which he tried in vain to conceal. With all my heart. Then I have a favor to ask of you, Valentine. Of me? Oh, how can I be fortunate enough for that? You called Haydée your sister just now. Let her be your real sister, Valentine. Repay her everything you feel you owe to me. Protect her, you and Maximilian, because the Count's voice became almost inaudible. Because from now on she'll be alone in the world. Alone in the world, repeated the voice behind him. Why? The Count turned around. Haydée was standing behind him, looking at him with an expression of stupefied amazement. Because tomorrow you will be free, replied the Count. Because you will take your proper place in the world. Because I don't want my destiny to darken yours. You're the daughter of a prince. I give you back your father's name and wealth. Haydée turned pale and said in a choked voice, Then you're leaving me. Haydée, you're young. You're beautiful. Forget me and you'll be happy. Very well, said Haydée. Your orders will be carried out. I will forget you and be happy. She took a step to withdraw. Oh my God, cried Valentine. Don't you see how pale she is? Don't you understand how she's suffering? Why should you expect him to understand that? Said Haydée with a heartbreaking expression. He's my master and I'm his slave. He has a right not to see anything. The Count trembled at the sound of her voice, which touched the most secret fibers of his heart. Can what I suspected be true? He cried. Haydée, would you be happy to stay with me? I'm young, replied Haydée softly. I love the life you've always made so sweet for me, and I'd regret it if I had to die. Do you mean to say that if I left you, I'd die? Yes. Then you love me. Oh, Valentine. He asks if I love him. Tell him if you love Maximilian. The Count felt his heart swell. He opened his arms, and Haydée threw herself into them with a cry. Yes, I love you, she said. I love you as I love my life, as I love my God, because for me you're the finest, the kindest, and the greatest man on this earth. Let it be as you say, then, my angel, said Monte Cristo. God, who raised me up against my enemies and made me victorious, didn't want me to have this penance at the end of my victory. I wanted to punish myself, but God wishes to forgive me. Perhaps your love will make me forget what I must forget. One word from you, Haydée, has enlightened me more than 20 years of my slow wisdom. You're all I have left in the world. Through you, I attach myself to life again. Through you, I can suffer. Through you, I can be happy. He stood for a moment in thoughtful silence. Then he said, Have I glimpsed the truth, O God? No matter whether it be reward or punishment, I accept this destiny. Come, Haydée, come. Putting his arm around Haydée's waist, he pressed the hand of Valentine and walked out of the room. An hour passed, during which Valentine remained breathlessly at Maximilian's side. Finally, she felt his heart beat in that slight trembling which announces the return of life through a young man's body. At length, his eyes opened. They stared lifelessly at first, but then his sight came back to him precise and real. With sight came feeling, and with feeling came pain. Oh, he cried in despair, I'm still alive. The Count deceived me. He picked up a knife from the table. Wake up, my darling, and look at me, said Valentine with her adorable smile. Maximilian uttered a piercing cry. Doubting his senses, dazzled by what seemed to him a celestial vision, he fell to his knees. The next morning at dawn, Maximilian and Valentine were walking arm in arm along the shore. They had found the door of the grotto open and had gone outside. The last stars of the night were still gleaming in the blue morning sky. Suddenly, Maximilian noticed a man standing in the shadow of a cluster of large rocks and waiting for a sign to come forward. He pointed the man out to Valentine and said, It's Jacopo, the captain of the yacht. She beckoned him to approach. Do you have something to tell us? Asked Maximilian. The Count told me to give you this letter, replied Jacopo. Maximilian opened the letter and read, My dear Maximilian, a felucca is now lying at anchor, waiting for you. Jacopo will take you to Leghorn, where Monsieur Noirtier is waiting for his granddaughter, whom he wishes to bless before you lead her to the altar. Everything in this grotto, my house on the Champs-Élysées, and my small chateau at Tréport are the wedding present which Edmond Dantès gives to the son of his employer, Monsieur Morel. Tell the angel who will watch over you to pray now and then for a man who, like Satan, believed himself for an instant to be equal to God, but who realized in all humility that supreme power and wisdom are in the hands of God alone. As for you, Maximilian, here is the secret of my conduct toward you. There is neither happiness nor unhappiness in this world. There is only the comparison of one state with another. Only a man who has felt ultimate despair is capable of feeling ultimate bliss. It is necessary to have wished for death, Maximilian, in order to know how good it is to live. Live then, and be happy, beloved children of my heart, and never forget that until the day God deigns to reveal the future to man, the sum of all human wisdom will be contained in these two words: wait and hope. Your friend Edmond Dantès, Count of Monte Cristo. Maximilian looked around him anxiously. The Count's generosity is really excessive, he said. Valentine would have been content with my modest fortune. Where is the Count? Take me to him. Jacopo pointed toward the horizon. What do you mean? Asked Valentine. Where is the Count? Where is Haydée? Look, said Jacopo. The two young people looked in the direction in which he was pointing. On the dark blue line separating the sky from the Mediterranean, they saw a white sail. Gone! Cried Maximilian. Farewell, my friend, my father. Gone, murmured Valentine. Farewell, my friend. Farewell, my sister. Who knows if we'll ever see them again, said Maximilian. My darling, said Valentine, the Count just told us all human wisdom was contained in these two words. Wait and hope.